Assalamu alaikum. Today we will start with our first chapter, that is about Introduction to Operating System. Okay, in this chapter I will give you a general overview of some of the main component of modern computer system, as well as what are the functions provided by the operating system. We will discuss different concepts like process management, memory management, storage management, protection and security, which are the services provided by the operating system. Okay, let's start with the definition of operating system. Like, what is a operating system? First thing that you need to know that operating system is a software. Okay, it's not a hardware. Operating system is a software. It is a program which is responsible for managing the computer hardware. So we can say that operating system is a software that communicates with the hardware and allow other users program to run on that computer hardware. So it is a program which acts as intermediary, like it is sitting in between a user and hardware, and facilitate the user to run their application program on computer hardware. Because if you don't have operating system installed in your computer or a hardware, like it can be a normal desktop computer, laptop computer, your software, your tablet, your notebook, if you do not install operating system into it, you cannot run any application program on it. So operating system is responsible for managing all the resources on your computer hardware. Okay, so it provides a basis for application program and then act as like sitting in between the computer user and computer hardware. It also allow you to communicate with the computer without knowing how to speak the computer language. Like you as a user, because you know computer understand binary 0101, and you can communicate with the computer without knowing the computer language by using hardware, by using operating system, because whatever you want to do on computer, you have to give this instruction to computer operating system, and operating system then will use computer hardware to understand it. Okay, it perform different basic functions in the system, like file management, memory management, process management, handling input output, and controlling of your devices like your disk drives, your printers. So it helps you to use your computer hardware efficiently, and it makes it easy for you to use computer system. Convenient mean easy. Uh, if we look at the computer system, we can roughly divide it into four basic main components, which are hardware, operating system, application program, and users. Okay, when we are saying hardware, hardware are what? Hardware are your computing resources like CPU, memory, input output devices. Okay, then operating system, as I already told you that operating system provide you the coordination and control of the hardware between different applications and users. So it is sitting in between hardware and application program and users. Like if we look here, these four components, you will see computer hardware is like on the lowest level, then operating system is in between your computer hardware and user and application program. On top of operating system, we have system and application program. Now what is a system and application program? Application program, like you know, you have a word processor, you have a PowerPoint compiler, your browser like Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer, these all are what? Your application program. Okay, so uh, these application program define the way in which these resources will be used to solve user computing problem. So operating system is responsible for controlling the hardware and coordinating its use between different application program and users. So it is sitting in the middle of computer hardware and system and application program and users. Users will use application program to do different tasks, like this user is using a notepad. Notepad is what? Your text editor, to write something. This user is using database system to do some task. This user is using assembler. This user is using compiler. Now these compiler, assembler, text editor, database system, these are all what? These are application program. And these application program, in order to do their work, in order to do their tasks on the computer hardware, they need the help of operating system. They will send their request to operating system, and then operating system will execute these requests on computer hardware. And users, obviously, you know, people, machine and other computer will be considered as a user. Okay, what operating system do? We will look into this in user point of view and computer point of view. Okay, like here, you know, operating system is sitting in between users and computer hardware. So we will see what users want from operating system and what computer want from operating system. Okay, so we will see it in two different point of views. So first we will see what operating system do based on user point of view. Now you know that most of the computer users are sitting in front of a PC, and PC is having a monitor, keyboard, mouse, and you know some other devices attached to it. And now this PC or this computer is designed for one user. So if it is designed for a single user, then that user, what he want, this user want that the operating system should maximize the work that user is doing on that computer. Like in this case, operating system will be designed mostly for ease of use, convenience. Like the user who is using a single computer by himself, like dedicated computer, he want that operating system should be easy to use and it should have a good performance. Good performance, what? Good performance in terms of resource utilization. Like you don't want, like if you want to visit some website or you are doing web surfing, you open a website and it takes let's suppose 2 to 3 minutes to load that website. You don't want it as a good performance. You wanted things to be done fast. Okay, but a normal user will not care about the resource utilization, like how much resources are being utilized by or not by operating system. But in case of shared computer like mainframe and mini computer, these are called shared computer. Why they are called shared computer? Because you have more than one users, and these users are using terminals to log into a single system that is held somewhere else, like a mainframe, big computers, and all other users are connecting with it through a terminal. So when there are more number of users and there is one system that is serving to all these users, then the main concern is like to keep all users busy or all user happy. All user want to make themselves happy with the performance of this mainframe. So mainframe computer operating systems should be designed in such a way that they provide this sharing of the resources among user efficiently. So for mainframe computers, the operating system should be designed by keeping in mind that resource utilization is an important issue, and it maximize these resource utilization to make it sure that all available CPU time, memory and input output devices are used efficiently, and no user should take more than his or her fair share. Okay, then comes workstation. So workstation, where users sit at workstation which is connected to some network, like you know in your labs. When you go into the lab, the systems that are there, we can call them a workstation. which are serving to you, and it is connected to the network as well. Okay, so the users then in terms of the resources have dedicated resources at their disposal, like whatever CPU you are using, you are not sharing it with any other student. The CPU in your computer is only working for you at that time, or memory is there and that is working for you, hard disk is there, it is working for you, input output device is only for you, it is not shared. They have dedicated resources, but there are some resources which are shared on the network. Same computer is connected to the network, and in the lab if you see there is one printer. So printer is actually a shared resource, it is shared among all the users. So workstation users are having some resources which are dedicated resources, and then there are some resources which are connected through network and it is shared among all the users. So operating systems when are being designed for such type of workstation, they design to compromise between individual usability and resource utilization. Like in the previous two examples, you have seen that here only dedicated resources. In case of mainframe, everything is shared, but in case of workstation, few things are shared, few things are dedicated. So the operating system should look for both things: ease of use, good performance, plus resource utilization. Okay. Then comes handheld computers. Handheld computer like your tablet, your mobile. Okay, these computers are resource poor. So like resource poor, you can say that they are designed for they do not have that much computing power or that much memory or hard disk available as like workstation or mainframe or mini computer. They are poor with respect to these computing resources. So the operating system designed for handheld computers should be optimized for usability and battery life, because battery life is one of the resource which is the scarce resource in term of handheld computer. So we don't want our operating system to eat all our battery. Like you have a phone and it only you always have to kept it on charging whenever you are using it, you don't like it. Okay, whenever you go and buy a new phone, you will also look one of the feature that is very important for you: what is the battery life of it? And this battery life depends on how much battery is used by the operating system when performing any activity on this system. Okay, so for these type of computers, the operating systems are designed that provide a good usability plus a good battery life. Then we have some computers which have no or very little user interface, like embedded computers. Embedded computer in devices like microwave. Microwave also have a embedded computer in it, where you have already designed system on it. You cannot change it, you cannot execute you cannot install new applications on your microwave every day. Similarly, automobiles, like in vehicles or in cars, you have many systems installed on it, but here you have no user interface. User interface, like you can use all the pre installed feature in it, but you cannot install everything, a new applications. Like you can install a new application in your phone or on your PC, but you cannot do it in your microwave, TV, refrigerator, or in your car every day. So for these kind of systems, operating systems are designed primarily to run without user intervention. Like the operating system don't want any kind of user interference in it. In the previous slide, we discussed what operating system want in user point of view. Now we will discuss what operating system want in computer point of view. So in computer point of view, operating system is a program that is mostly involved with the hardware. Okay, so if we look in the computer point of view, or in this context, we can say that operating system is a resource allocator. How we say that it is a resource allocator? Because it has many resources that may be required to solve a problem. Now what kind of resources? What are the resources in computer? Your CPU time, it is a resource. Memory space, file storage space, input output devices. So all these things are what are the resources, and operating system act as manager of these resources. Okay, so operating system is responsible for managing all the resources, and it also decide between conflicting requests for efficient and fair resource use. Conflicting requests, like two programs want to use CPU at the same time, so this is a conflicting request. Now who will solve this problem? Operating system. Now operating system will allow only one process to use CPU, and the other one has to wait until the first one finish, and then it will allow the other one to use it. Like uh, how to allocate resources among different processes when there is a conflicting requests. And then second is, we can say that in a different view of operating system emphasizes the need to control different input output devices and user program. So then in that case operating system is a control program. When it is a control program, it means it is responsible for managing the execution of user program and does not allow any error to occur at that time, or improper use of computer. Now improper use of computer, like if two processes are running or three processes are running in the computer system, and your operating system is also there running in the computer system. So one process want to access some place, some memory in the computer which is only reserved for operating system or for critical program. So or one process want to corrupt the other process, like two processes are running at the same time, P1 and P2. P1 wants to do some activities which will terminate P2, so it should not be allowed. P1 wants to do what it wants to do, but under a control manner. So operating system is like a monitor. It is looking at the activity of each and every process or each and every application running in the computer, and does not allow to interfere one application with the other one during the execution. So it is like a control program, and if any application, program or process wants to do something improper, operating system will kill it, terminate it, give it punishment. Okay, so it's like it is controlling everything, all the programs running in the computer. Okay, now we will see what is the definition of operating system. Although we have already discussed a lot about it, there is no one universally accepted definition. I mean, there is no one definition that we say like this is operating system. But one thing that we can say as the definition of operating system is everything what you get when you order an operating system is a operating system. Like when you order Windows 10 and install Windows 10 in your system, then Windows 10 is what? An operating system. We have different type of operating system like Windows, we have Linux, we have Mac. Okay, Android is the operating system for smartphone. Okay, iOS is for iPhone. So these are example of operating system. So like you install Windows 10 in your computer, so is everything that installed in your computer with Windows 10, is it operating system or it is a part of operating system? No. Like when you install Windows, you was already installed with it Internet Explorer. So Internet Explorer is an application program, it is not a operating system. Okay, so this is not something a good definition. So what is the proper definition of operating system? Basically operating system is a one program which is running at all the times on the computer, and this program is called kernel. Everything other than kernel is either a system program or an application program. System program that ships with the operating system, like when you order Windows 10, anything that comes with Windows 10 is a system program, but other than that all the things are application program. But okay, system programs are associated with operating system but are not necessarily the part of the kernel. Basically, kernel is the operating system. Okay. If we look at a modern normal computer system, we can see that computer consists of one or more CPUs or processor, and then there are number of device controllers which are connected through a common bus. Like if you look at this diagram, this is a CPU. You can have one CPU or more than one CPU or processors, and then you have different device controllers and then a memory, and all these things are connected through a common bus. Now, what is the purpose of this common bus? This common bus provide a shared provide access to this memory, and this memory is a shared memory. Memory here means RAM. Okay. Now, what is this device controller? Like with hard disk, you have disk controller. With mouse, keyboard and printer, because you attach with your computer these devices through USB interface, so we have USB controller. Then for monitor we have graphic adapter. So these device controller, these are in charge of a special type of device. Like disk controller is in charge of disk, USB controller is in charge of mouse, keyboard, printers or any other device that you insert through USB interface. So CPU and the device controllers can execute in parallel, but they are accessing a shared memory, because everything need to be in memory before execution, but memory is one. So CPU, disk controller, USB controller, graphic adapter, these all can execute at the same time in parallel, but they are competing for memory cycle on the bus to access the memory. So in order to ensure this access to the shared memory, a memory controller is required, okay, which is responsible for synchronizing access to the memory, so that all these controller and CPU can access a memory. Okay, for a computer to start running, when you power on your computer or you restart your computer, it need an initial program to run, and this initial program or the first program when you power on your computer that run, it is called bootstrap program. Okay, this bootstrap program is only done when you switch on your computer, okay, or restart your computer. Okay, where this bootstrap program is saved or stored inside the computer hardware, it is stored in ROM. Okay, you have two type of memory, one is RAM and the other one is ROM. ROM is read only and RAM is random access memory. So your bootstrap program is stored in ROM or EPROM. EPROM is what? Electrically erasable programmable read only memory. We also call it firmware. Okay, EPROM we also called it firmware. So bootstrap program is the program which starts its execution when you first time switch on your computer. When you switch on your computer or restart your computer, where we store bootstrap program. Bootstrap program is stored in ROM or EPROM. Okay, now what is the purpose of this bootstrap program? Is bootstrap program is the operating system? No, bootstrap program is not the operating system. So why we have this bootstrap program? This bootstrap program is responsible for initializing different things in your computer. Now what are those things that it initializes? CPU registers, your device controller and memory content, because last time when you use your computer you have some data in memory, you have some data in device controller or in CPU register. So when you restart your computer, everything again switch back to zero. Like when a new class come into the new classroom, the whiteboard need to be wiped off so that a new lecture should start on it. So same is when you restart your computer, bootstrap program will wipe out everything from your CPU registers, from your device controllers and from your memory and restart or initialize it back from zero. Okay, so first thing, it initialize everything in the system. The second function that is provided by bootstrap program is it load operating system kernel and start its execution. So in order to do so, the bootstrap program must need to look for the operating system kernel or locate the operating system kernel, because operating system you install not on ROM. Operating system is installed on hard disk, like C drive mostly is used to install for your Windows. So bootstrap program will go and look, or maybe you are doing live booting, so your operating system is on some DVD or some USB drive, so or in hard disk. So bootstrap program have to look or locate the operating system kernel and load it into memory, because anything which start its execution, we say start execution. When everything start its execution, it means it has to be loaded into memory. Memory mean here RAM. Okay, so bootstrap program is the initial program that first execute when you switch on your computer, and it is responsible for initializing the system and loading the kernel and start its execution. Okay, as I discussed previously, like here, these disk controller and CPU can execute concurrently. Concurrently mean at the same time, and these disk controller are responsible for input output devices. Like here, disk is what? Input or output device. Mouse is input, keyboard is input, printer is output, monitor is output. So these device controllers are connected with input output devices. So your CPU and these input output devices can execute in parallel at the same time, concurrently. Okay, and each device controller is controlling or is in charge of one particular type of device, and these device controller has a local buffer. Local buffer means its own memory. These device controller, they have their own memory here. Okay, a small memory which is called, okay, this memory, like here this controller have a memory where it store data temporarily. Okay, like a graphic adapter store data temporarily over here before displaying it on monitor. And same here, like when you press any key on keyboard, this data move from keyboard to here device controller local buffer. Like here you press A from keyboard, here this A will move from keyboard into the local buffer of this controller, and then from here it will go to the memory. Okay, so this is how it travels from keyboard to controller and from controller to memory, but it temporarily store here in this local buffer. Okay, now when it is stored in local buffer, in order to move it into memory, we need the bus. Okay, we need this bus. It will travel through this bus in order to reach over here. So how to acquire the bus? How can USB controller or this keyboard controller can tell to the CPU that data is ready inside me, now A is ready, please move it to memory? So for this purpose there are some special signals are used, and these signals are called interrupts. Okay, interrupt is what? Occurrence of an event is signal through it. Okay, either hardware can generate interrupt or software can generate interrupt. So CPU is responsible for moving data from main memory to the local buffer or local buffer to the main memory, and these device controller inform CPU that it has finished its operation using interrupt. Now interrupt is what? It is a signal. This signal is generated by your hardware like device controller or maybe a software. If software generate a interrupt, then it is also called what it is called? Yeah, software generated interrupts are called trap. So when interrupt occur, interrupt mean hardware or software generate a signal for the accomplishment of some task, and inform CPU that I have completed this task. Okay, this is interrupt, a signal, not only maybe a task, maybe some warning, maybe some error, okay, or completion of task. So interrupt is a signal which is generated by either hardware or software, and this signal sent by hardware to the CPU. Now what happened when CPU received the interrupt? Interrupt is like an emergency situation. Whatever CPU is doing, CPU will stop doing that thing and first have to look at the interrupt, what this interrupt is and how to handle this interrupt. So interrupt will transfer control to the special program which is called interrupt service routine. Okay, interrupt transfer control to interrupt service routine. What is interrupt service routine? Maybe this is a function which is written in C++ code, like you write some function in C++. So this is a function, or this is a program which need to execute as a result of interrupt, and each interrupt has a different function. This interrupt service routine will be different. Okay, and which interrupt service routine need to be executed as a result of interrupt, this is known through interrupt vector. This interrupt vector contain the addresses of all the interrupt service routines. So this interrupt vector is like a array. This array store the addresses of interrupt service routines, like interrupt 1, interrupt 2. So this is a array which store the addresses of interrupt service routine, and interrupt service routine is written over here somewhere. I1 is here in the memory, I2 is here in the memory. So what happened is, when interrupt is generated, your CPU go and look like interrupt is generated by I2. So your CPU will go to the interrupt vector and look, okay, I2, where is I2? Here is the address of I2. It will go and locate I2 and then execute whatever code is written here in I2, or whatever function is being performed over here. Okay, so CPU will do whatever is written over here, and then once it finish its execution, then control come back to the CPU and it will start resuming the operation or continuing the operation whatever it was doing before the interrupt. Okay, another thing is trap or exception. What is a trap or exception? This is a terminology, software generated interrupt. If an interrupt is generated by software, it is called trap or exception, and our operating system works with interrupt, so that's why we have this definition of operating system as well. An operating system is interrupt driven. Okay, now we will discuss some storage structures that are available in computer system. We have main memory. Main memory means your RAM, random access memory, and this is the only memory that the CPU can access directly. Like CPU cannot read data directly from your hard disk or USB or your DVD or your CD, but CPU can only directly read data from only one memory, which is called main memory, or we also called it, or you are also familiar with it with the name RAM. Okay, what is a RAM? Full form of it is random access memory. Why we call it random access? We call it random access because at any time you want to read any address in this RAM, you can go directly to that address. It's not sequential. Sequential access is, yani if you want to read address number 10, then you must have to go from address 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 10, 7, 8, 9, 10. But in case of random access, if you want to read address number 10, you can go directly and point on address 10. Okay, and it is volatile. Okay, what it means volatile? Volatile means the data that's stored on RAM, it is only stored until power is on, until electricity is there. If there is no electricity, there is no power, the data which is present in RAM will be wiped out, will be deleted. Okay, you cannot permanently store data in RAM like you permanently store data in ROM. You can permanently store data in your hard disk, USB, CD, SSD, but you cannot store data permanently in RAM. RAM is volatile. It only store your information until power is on. When power off, data will be deleted. Okay, then we have other storage, which is secondary storage. Other than RAM or main memory, other things are called secondary storage. So secondary storage is like RAM. Nowadays you can have maximum like 16 GB, 32 GB RAM, but in computer 32 GB or 16 GB is not enough for us. We need like now 1 terabyte. Our data is increasing every day, so we need something more, and we want to store our data permanently. Anything in RAM is not permanent, it is just temporary memory. So if you want to store your data permanently, you need some other kind of storage. What is other kind of storage? That is secondary storage, which is the extension of main memory that provide large non-volatile. Non-volatile means permanent storage capacity. So in secondary storage we have hard disk, we have solid state disk, HDD and SDD. Like nowadays if you go and buy your computer, you will have SDD, not HDD. Hard disk is HDD, is the previous or older now storage, and it is cheaper than SDD. Why? Because SDD is more fast and HDD is slower as compared to SDD. Then when we look at the storage hierarchy, we organize these different storage system with respect to the speed, cost and volatility. Like here, if we look at this now, let's look at speed first. Okay, speed decreases like this. On the highest level of hierarchy we have registers. Registers are there inside CPU. Registers are inside CPU. Internal memory is called registers, and they are fastest. Okay, then we have cache memory. Cache memory is between register and main memory. This is your RAM. Okay, main memory is your RAM. In between RAM and CPU we have another type of memory which is called cache. Cache is memory that where you store data. Because CPU can directly access RAM, but in order to access RAM it takes more time as compared to access cache. Cache is faster than RAM. So the data which is inside RAM and CPU need that data more frequently, then that data can be moved from main memory to cache so that CPU directly find it in cache. But if some data is not available in cache, then CPU has to read it to RAM and then make a copy in cache so that next time when it needs it, it can find it from cache. So register is fastest, then comes cache, then comes main memory, then solid state disk, hard disk. So this is what with respect to speed. Okay. When we look at the cost, which is the most expensive, again same. Register is the most expensive memory, then cache, then main memory, then solid state disk, hard disk, optical disk and magnetic disk. And third thing is volatility. Now when we look at volatility, these three memories are volatile and then rest are non-volatile. Your main memory, your cache and register are volatile memory. Okay, temporary memory. Until power is on, data is there. But solid state disk, hard disk, optical disk and magnetic disk are your non-volatile memory. We have seen cache memory in the previous slide. That was a memory, cache memory. But caching by itself is a concept. What is a caching? It is an important concept or principle which is being used in different levels when we are looking at computer system, in hardware, in operating system and software. We use cache in all these places. So what is the cache concept is? Cache concept is the information which you need frequently, which you need mostly, is copied from slower to faster storage for temporarily, okay, not permanently but temporarily. Like CPU, if need a data more frequently, then we move it from main memory to cache memory, so that CPU need it, get it from cache, because cache is faster. In order to access to main memory, it takes more time for CPU, but to access cache it takes less time. So the data which CPU need mostly, we copy from main memory to cache, but temporarily, and when CPU doesn't need it, we delete it. Okay, so faster storage checked first. So CPU, if need any data, it will always check first into the cache. If it is present in cache, fine, but if it is not, then it has to bring it from main memory to cache and also use it. Okay, cache is always smaller than the storage being cache. Yes, your cache and main memory is not always of the same size. It is all because it is expensive. So, and also there is no use of having it main size, so it is smaller than the main storage which you want to cache. But when we are or when operating system is working with cache, it has different management problems or design problem, like with respect to cache size and replacement policy. Cache has limited size. Cache cannot be as large as main memory. Okay, maybe your main memory is 16 GB and cache is only 256 MB. Okay, so cache size is small, so you need to have a replacement policy. What is a replacement policy? As I told you, that most frequently used data is copied into cache. So if data and cache has a limited size, so if you are going to copy all 256 megabyte data into the cache, now CPU need more data, but there is no place in cache to bring it. So what we have to do is we have to replace the older data from cache and bring the new one. So which data should be replaced? Whether the one that is the older data with respect that has not been used by CPU since long time, or whatever. Okay, so replacement policy is also one of the important design principles that need to be catered when we are working with cache. Okay, direct memory access structure. Okay, in order to understand this, let's go through this example. Like during a normal operation, what happened is, every time, if a data is copied by like let's suppose here I have a keyboard as a device. Okay, this is keyboard and this is my device controller of the keyboard. Okay, keyboard controller, this is keyboard controller. Now you copy data from keyboard byte by byte to the device controller, and from device controller 1 byte at a time is copied and moved to the main memory. This is your RAM or main memory. Okay, and here it is your CPU. This is your CPU. Okay, now what happened is, when here 1 byte of data move from keyboard to here, then keyboard will generate, or this device controller will generate what? Interrupt, and send CPU a signal, I have received a 1 byte of data. Now what CPU has to do? CPU has to copy this data from here and then read it over here. Okay, now another input output request is received by the keyboard, send me another byte of data, like B. Again an interrupt is generated, CPU will stop whatever it is doing, copy this B and send it over here. So every time, for each byte of data, an interrupt is generated and data is transferred by CPU to memory. So this is really very expensive operation, because CPU is always busy in doing this input output request operations and not executing or doing anything useful activity. So for this purpose, there come a concept of DMA, or direct memory access. Now what is direct memory access? Like, instead of generating interrupt for each byte of data, now what happened is, we receive an input output request to read like 5 kilobyte of data from hard disk. Let's suppose this is a hard disk over here, let's suppose, and this is the controller of hard disk. So this 5 kilobyte data is stored over here in this hard disk. Now instead of generating interrupt for each byte of data, the interrupt will be generated by this device for block of data. Instead of byte, it read data in the form of block. Let's suppose one block size is 1 kilobyte. So we will have 5 blocks for 5 kilobyte. So one block, okay, when one block is ready, it send interrupt to the CPU, and then CPU will ask to directly transfer this DMA through the direct memory access here without disturbing this CPU. Device will directly transfer this data to memory and then send interrupt to CPU that I have transferred one block. So now instead of generating interrupt for each byte of data, an interrupt is generated for each block of data, and block size is much bigger than byte. Okay. So when one block is generated per interrupt is generated per block, so it tells the device driver that the operation has completed instead of one interrupt per byte for the low speed devices. So CPU is just doing whatever it is doing. We are not disturbing CPU. Device through direct memory access directly send data to memory and then just inform through this interrupt to CPU, okay, first block has been moved, then second block has been moved, third block has been moved.